Poland is also another very important ally for us in the Baltics. And then I feel maybe it would also be good if Poland had mandatory military service.
Cześć, jesteśmy tu dzisiaj z Markusem, który pochodzi z Estonii i właśnie skończył swoją służbę wojskową w estońskiej armii, o której będziemy z nim dzisiaj rozmawiali. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Markus, you just finished your Estonian army service. How was it? Could you tell us more about it?
Yes, so I just finished my service. I'm doing this interview with no official affiliation with the Estonian army, and these are just my own views. Yes, so I finished it in June, and it's a service that normally lasts either 8 or 11 months. It's mandatory military service, meaning all men in Estonia who are medically eligible and are between the ages of 18 and 27, they have to go to the army. And depending on the unit, they do different things. So there are some people who get to do very sportsy, very sort of stereotypically military things, run around the forest, hike a lot, shoot weapons. Other people get to do other things. So there are some people who, for example, work on the cyber defense unit. There are people who study to become medics. I was in the Estonian Navy. I was in the Coastal Defense Squadron, so the land component of the Navy.
So for how long did you serve, and what was your experience like?
So I served there for 11 months, and I finished in June of this year. How was my service? Well, it was. It can feel very long once you're inside the system, because although I volunteered to go to this specific unit at this specific time, it is still something you just have to do. And you're there with people you can't choose who they are. They might be motivated, they might not be motivated at all. And so it really depends on who you're with and where you are. I was in the Estonian Navy in the Coastal Defense Squadron, so I got to be in Tallinn, near my home, which was convenient because when we would have leave, I could sort of continue with my private life. Other people go to, perhaps the other end of the country, and they have to travel many hours to get home on a weekend if they can go home.
So you mentioned that you volunteered to that specific unit, but military conscription in Estonia is mandatory. So how does that work?
Yes, so it is mandatory in the sense that they will call you up for a medical examination, and then once you've done that part, you really have to go where they tell you to go. The unit they have assigned you to. But you have some sort of possibilities to change that. So if you go to the medical examination earlier, you can say, I want to volunteer for, let's say, the Navy, or the Special Forces, or for a reconnaissance unit. So people who are motivated, they can sort of influence where they're going in the end. It's not, of course, a guarantee, but this helps. The other thing is that you can postpone the military service if you go to university, or if you have children, and there are some other conditions. But even then, even if you have postponed your service, you can still decide, oh, actually, I want to go now. And so for me, I could have gone a year later, but then it would have interfered more with a master's degree that I want to do.
And at what age usually do Estonian men go to the army?
So this is a sort of question for each person who is conscripted, whether they want to go straight after high school, they want to do some other things, and then maybe go later. And of course, if you get called upon and you don't have any reason to postpone the service, you just have to go when they call you. Most people, I would say, go after high school. But it's good that it's sort of a mix. So people with different life experience, from different ages, come together. They can learn things from each other, or learn more from that experience in the military as general. So I went when I was 22, which meant that I could sort of look at how people sort of work in that system based on my life experience beyond high school. And I could also see the way I differ, from the people fresh out of high school, which is sometimes, physically you can't tell much, but then in the way people behave, you will notice it.
And so what was your original perception of the army prior to going to serve? And then now after you finished, what is your perception and has it changed from the original one?
So a lot of my friends went earlier, but their service was very disturbed by the COVID pandemic, meaning a lot of the time they were in quarantine, or half of their unit was in quarantine, meaning that their training was really disturbed by it. Other people who went later and who went to other units as well had a very positive experience. There are some people who are very actively involved with the military even once it's over, because you get called up for extra trainings. One of my classmates who went right after high school became a platoon leader, then later he has gone back 8 times. And he enjoys it, he sees it as a very important thing for him to do.
So would you say that you enjoyed your military service?
Yes, I think I enjoyed the learning part of it. I was unfortunately in a unit where the other half of my service, I actually had to do a sort of the day-to-day military job, which became very routine heavy. But the first part, where we had a very specific curriculum we were following, I took an NCO course. That was very interesting because I got to learn a lot of new things. Later on, I paid more attention to these sort of work culture, bureaucracy type of questions. But early on, I got to learn a lot about actually fighting a war. And it's one thing to do it in theory, and the other thing to do it yourself. Obviously, in training, we don't take any risks to our life. But you can see, for example, how the physical effort for some people is a bit too much. How far you can push, a group of people rather than just yourself. These are important questions, I think, in real wartime as well. For example, what do you do if you're in a squad of 10 people, and then one of those people is either unmotivated or they're physically, injured, or something is wrong? You're not going to leave them behind, obviously, but this is a huge risk for everybody else. And this is a question you have to ask yourself. And then, I can't imagine what Ukrainians are going through, where they have to work with people who've been mobilized, some against their will, some volunteers, who have very little training comparatively to what we experienced.
And is military service necessary?
Absolutely. I think right now, in a country like Estonia, there's not really another choice. We're 1.3 million people. 1.3 million people. Our military, at the maximum size, these are public numbers, is 40,000 that we can mobilize with a hot reserve that is always ready. On the Russian side of the border, in Pskov Oblast, it's 19,000. And now this spring they announced they want to double or triple that number if the war in Ukraine allows them to do that. Now, that's not enough for them to attack Estonia, but it's still a lot of arms and armed people beyond the other side of the border, led by people who would probably want to attack or disturb Estonia or the other Baltic states if they only could. And we know this from Russian state television. To add to this, you also have to think about other countries around Estonia. There is Finland that can mobilize 300,000 people. That's more than Germany. I don't know the Polish number, but I think Poland is also another very important ally for us in the Baltics. And then I feel maybe it would also be good if Poland had mandatory military service. Obviously, this is a debate for Poles to have, but as an Estonian, I would be very assured if I know that one of our biggest allies in the neighborhood would have also a force that they can actually sort of use to deter and also, if need be, actually deny the Russian army anything they want to do.
Estonia has a Russian-speaking minority, which amounts to around 1/4 of the population, and it is often said that military service actually helps integrate them. Would you say that that's what you witnessed when you did your military service?
Absolutely. I mean, there are things that obviously you cannot do in such a short time frame, and it also depends on the people. But in my personal experience, it was a very big force for integration. I was subordinate to a Russian-speaking conscript. I had soldiers who were Russian speakers who came in with almost zero knowledge of the Estonian language and left being able to understand it and even wanting to speak it. Some people who maybe met at the beginning of the service and then again at the end were surprised, oh my God, like at the beginning you didn't speak a word and now you can have conversations on equal standing. Obviously, this is a very heated topic in Estonia. The integration process has been very long. There have been some sort of good cases that then turned into bad cases.
For instance?
Some years ago, there was the case of Denis Metsavas, who was a high-ranking officer in the Estonian army, and it then turned out that he had been compromised during his trips to Russia, where he was visiting his family, and then he was forced to collaborate with Russian security services. So that was a very big hit for the reputation of the military as a site of integration. But I think in general terms it still holds. It still helps a lot, because there, you do everything together. You sleep in the same tents. You eat the same food. I don't think it's only about the language. It's also about the value convergence. So, maybe they won't really speak Estonian, but they will act the same way that we do.
Poland and Estonia are both part of the NATO military alliance. During your military conscription, did you see any Polish forces?
So yes, the Navy is a good place for seeing other allies because there's a lot of visitors, ships visiting us, but also just different officers, soldiers coming for, seminars, trainings. So I saw a few Polish naval officers, but actually the most I saw Poles was in a different military base with the Polish Air Force. So as a part of NATO's enhanced forward presence, all the Baltic states are covered by other air forces because the Baltic states are just too small to have their own. And so we have Polish fighter jets now in Estonia, and on multiple occasions I got to see them. The Polish army was also present at the Independence Day parade alongside France, the UK, other bigger allies that have their troops in Estonia.
So Norway has universal military conscription where both men and women are conscripted, and Denmark is thinking of instating this. What is your opinion on it? Should women also do military service? So
I think the issue and the reason why there is no mandatory service for women right now, it is voluntary, so that if they want, they can go. The reason why there is no mandatory service is firstly logistical. It's just very hard to have double the conscripts, and there's right now no reason to really expand the army in numbers rather than working with the men we already have and sort of improving their quality as soldiers. I think it's just about capacity. The other reason is if you have to fight a defensive war, not only do you want people to actually use weapon systems and actually do the fighting, you also need people who keep the economy going. So the big worry is that if there happens to be a war, then somebody needs to keep running the economy, and women are in a perfect position to do that. This is also the rationale in, for example, Finland, where they calculated that if they mobilize their army, the hit on their GDP every week will be tremendous. Banks need to keep operating, shops need to be open, factories need to keep going, And so in that sense, we couldn't really mobilize many more people.
But in terms of gender equality, would you think it would be fair for both men and women to do military service?
That would assume that military service is something that can only happen through conscription, and that's not really the case. As I said, just contributing to society in general is also contributing to defense. It's still an option for women. If they want to go, they can go. And I don't think it should be treated as a punishment for the men. It helps keep them safe and keep, their relatives safe. Of course, there are people who go and they don't like it, and they think, oh, if I'm forced to do this, then women should also be forced to do this. But that's just faulty logic from their part, because they have some personal reasons why they don't like it. But we shouldn't treat it as some sort of burden that only the men are carrying.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.